What's up guys, Asian here again with another build video, so to speak here. Today we're going to be looking at revisiting 3-piece Willpower and 3-piece Minor Slayer. For this time we're going to be going over the Magicka Sorcerer. So if you guys saw my previous video looking at the Magicka Templar and how 3-piece Willpower compares 3-piece Minor Slayer sets there, we found that Willpower seemed to perform a little bit better on a Magicka Templar if you're using an Asylum staff. Now, the other class that can use the Asylum staff to great effect is going to be the Magicka Sorcerer, because the spammable for a Magicka Sorcerer, assuming you're not doing a heavy attack build, is Force Pulse. So, obviously, the Magicka Sorcerer is going to be a prime candidate for the Asylum staff. So, we're going to see or explore in this video whether or not the 3-piece Willpower still outperforms 3-piece Minor Slayer sets on a Magicka Sorcerer, both with pets and non-pets. Now I have done the tests already, but I'm just gonna show you guys what's going on with these two sets here. So we're just gonna do non-pet parses, two of them, one with Willpower, one with Minor Slayer, and so you guys can get a sense of the kind of DPS you can pull using either sets. And then I'll show you guys my results, so you guys can kind of come to your own conclusions based on this, but the results might surprise you if you guys think that the magplar, the findings from the magplar video will carry over to the Magicka Sorcerer video. So for the non-pet parts, we're just going to be using Julianos, 2-piece Lambris, Willpower, or Moondancer, Asylum Lightning Staff infused with the Shock Damage enchant, and a Sharpened Maelstrom Lightning Staff with a Weapon Damage enchant on the back bar. So, again, this is kind of the same deal between what we looked at in the magplar. Willpower gives us approximately 350 extra magicka and that extra 186 spell damage, which when you combine it all together, is about a 210 to 220 extra spell damage. And so the question is, does that offset the Minor Slayer boost that we get from the 3-piece Moondancer set? If you guys don't know already, Minor Slayer does not scale very well. It's a little bit weird how it scales, so it's not going to be a flat 5% increase to your DPS as it would seem. So the question now becomes, does Willpower outperform Moondancer? So basically, does that extra effective 210, 220 spell damage outweigh the 5% extra damage you'd get from Minor Slayer? So that's what we're going to kind of answer today with this video. So like I said, we're going to go ahead and start things off with a parse. The Willpower and Moondancer are going to be using the default magicka regen on one piece, and then two other pieces have spell damage. You can go with 3 spell damage if you want. You're not really going to see that much of a DPS loss with one regen glyph. From my testing, the DPS is pretty much within margin of error, so for me that's between 1 and no %, so less than a 1% difference basically. So do what you want with that. Magicka Sorcerers do have a big sustain problem in that their drain per second versus regen per second is going to be a lot larger. So regardless if you have a regen glyph or not, you're still going to have to heavy attack even on a Force Pulse build. So I do need to gain some ultimate here. So the only thing that we're going to be changing between the non-pet parse is really going to be whether we're using Willpower or Moondancer. So Willpower can only be attained in purple quality, so you can never get gold Willpower jewelry. Compare that to Master Architect, Moondancer, and IA. You can get those in gold quality. You just have to do the vet version of the trials. Infallible Aether comes from all the Kraglorn trials. Moondancer comes from Vet Maw, and Master Architect comes from Vet Hoff. So obviously Maw and Hoff are very difficult trials to complete, so a lot of you guys won't necessarily be able to access the gold Moondancer or gold Master Architect jewelry. The best you guys might be able to get is going to be purple or blue, depending on how lucky you are with your weekly coffers. So we're just going to go ahead and start the parse. Again, this is the Willpower parse here. Alright, so there we go. That's one parse done. So now we're just going to swap over to Moondancer and do that again. We will be going over the comp metrics parses after we finish both parses, so you guys can get a direct comparison. So do keep in mind that, like all parses, even on a target skeleton, where you don't have to play mechanics, there are going to be some user errors. I'm sure you guys have noticed that I did miss a couple of my light weaves there, and I did let some of my dots fall off, so I didn't recast them early enough. It's just something to keep in mind. There is going to be some margin of error if you decide to test this on your own. So if you are going to try to replicate my results here, make sure to get plenty of data points. I recommend at least 3 parses. So, you know, there's a saying in statistics that, you know, 1 data point does not a trend make. So the more data points that you get, the more accurate your data is going to become. So we're just going to do this now. This is the Moondancer parse. Alright, so there we go. We finished both of our parses, so we're going to pull out comment metrics right now. So this is the Moondancer parse. If we can see here, we got 34.69 as our parse here. So now let's take a look at our Willpower parse. Pretty much the exact same, 34,690. So for a magicka sorcerer, it seems like the difference is a lot smaller, which means there could be something with magicka sorcerers that is different compared to magicka templars. It could be due to the fact that templars have 10% extra crit damage. It could be due to the fact that on a solo parse you have minor prophecy as a sorc versus minor sorcery as a magplar. So there could be a couple of things going on here that's kind of making the results a little bit closer here. So now I'm going to quickly show you guys the spreadsheet that I did made up while I was testing it earlier. So there we have it. So you guys can see here, this is, I did 5 parses, no pet, with pet, Moondancer, and then Willpower, and we can compare them here. So these are all the parses that I got here. No pet, Moondancer, no pet, Willpower, pet, Moondancer, pet, Willpower. So you can see all these parses here. Down here are the averages for each of them, and over here is the percentage difference. So you can see here that Moondancer on a no pet build will outperform Willpower by 1.32%. We can round that down to about 1.3%. And over here with the pet, Moondancer outperforms Willpower by a smaller margin, 0.37%, or we can round that up, I guess, to 0.4%. So it seems like, at least on a magicka sorcerer, solo parse, self-buffed, it's very important to add those qualifiers in there because this is not a equivalent to a raid scenario. It seems like minor slayer sets will outperform Willpower. So this is kind of the opposite finding that we found in the magplar video, and I already gave a couple of potential things that could be explaining this discrepancy. Like I said, magicka sorcs self-buff, you get minor prophecy, not minor sorcery, which might scale a little bit differently, crit versus spell damage. compared to a magplar. Magplars do get 10% extra crit damage from one of their blazing spear passives, so that could also play a factor in this. One other thing to remember is that pet sorcs, the pet damage does not scale off of spell damage, it scales off of max magicka, so that might be why Willpower is not performing as well, because that extra 189 spell damage is not translating very well to your pet damage. So there's a lot of potential things that might be causing this effect here. That Willpower is outperforming on Magplars compared to Minus Slayer, but it's the opposite effect on Magsorcs. So you guys can take this as it will. Again, there's only 5 parses for each of them, so 20 parses in total, so 20 data points to play around with. Obviously, the more parses I do, the closer I'll get to the truth, the closer I'll get to finding out which one's actually going to be better. But like a lot of parses, there's obviously going to be a lot of user error, there's going to be lag, you're going to be missing light weaves here and there, so there's not a easy way to keep things constant between both Moondancer versus Willpower. So that's kind of why we want to have as many data points as possible. But for right now, we can pretty much conclusively say that Minor Slayer is outperforming Willpower, at least on a Magicka Sorcerer self-buffed. Now in a raid scenario, this might be different. I'm definitely going to try to bring my Magicka Sorcerer out to raids to see whether or not this trend continues to hold true. But that's going to take a lot more time to collect the data, because obviously I'm not raiding every single day. But once I get enough data from raids, I will revisit this issue again, probably only with the Magicka Sorcerer. I don't really bring my Magicka Templar out to raids too much. So that's kind of it for this video. You guys can play around on the PTS if you guys have NA tunes. They recently copied over NA tunes back to the PTS, so if you have Willpower on any of your NA tunes as of yesterday, they will be carried over onto the PTS, so you can go ahead and test that out. Unfortunately, you don't get Willpower on any template characters, so if you are an EU player, you can't really test out Willpower versus Minor Slayer that way. So that concludes this video. Hope you found this as insightful as I did, and I will see you guys in the next dungeon.